Hey guys, strength coach Josh Henkin here along with strength coach Troy Anderson. What we want to do is break down some of the most common mistakes that people make in their sandbag training technique. A lot of people sort of assume that there is no technique with a sandbag because it's kind of a softer implement. But because it shifts and moves and has a dimensional component, it has definitely not just technique, but even more technique than a lot of the other implements you're going to use. Now, good lifting techniques are going to be paramount, just as you would use with a barbell, dumbbell, kettlebell, and other implements. However, because the instability and again, the dimensional component that I'll show you in a moment, a lot of things have to be considered when you're doing these lifts right. Probably one of the most incorrectly done lifts is a clean and press. So if Troy goes ahead and cleans the bag, a lot of people clean it so the weight ends up being on the back part of their hands. The problem is this gap now he has created from his shoulder to his hands. If he goes ahead and tries to press from here, it becomes an anterior delt exercise, which is what we don't want to do. Most of the other implements that we use, like a kettlebell, for example, if Troy brings up a kettlebell in the press position, look how close the weight is in relationship to the shoulder and the hand is to the shoulder so that he can maximize use of his torso and his upper back in pressing the weight and stabilizing the shoulder overhead. Where people get in problems with their shoulders when the weight is very anterior and then would actually be the same as if Troy tried to press a kettlebell from here. Okay? He's going to create far too much stress upon that anterior delt and become problems with that bicep tendon and so forth. Plus, he's just not going to be able to lift a lot of load. People don't barbell press with the weight out here. They keep it very close to their body for a very specific reason. Now I'm going to have Troy also show you if he was to grab on the outside handles and clean to press. Now the reason we don't like this very much is because it takes a lot of the instability out of the sandbag as well. So if he cleans the bag up, number one, his hands start very wide to his shoulders. So again, he can't utilize a lot of the upper back muscles to stabilize himself as he presses above the head. It's going to become largely a shoulder exercise, which is what we don't want again. Also, there's no instability of the weight. His weight is now stable. He's at a weird leverage point. That's what makes the exercise difficult. And wax, Troy. A lot of people then go, well, Josh, what about grip strength? That's fine, but if grip strength is the only reason you're doing this, you're going to be very limited in what you can do throughout the rest of your body. The smallest factor, which is your hands, is going to become a weak link and you're not going to get much out of pressing the sandbag at all. When people think of sandbags, probably no exercise has more of a foundation to a lot of people's preconceptions as shouldering and a shoulder squat. It's also the exercise people do incorrectly the most often. Well, let's address the shoulder first. When Troy goes ahead and shoulders, he wants to make sure his weight starts 50% over a little bit forward. A lot of people end up reaching forward for the weight and causing a lever arm upon their low back. Secondly, having him actually scoop the weight underneath is actually a much larger range of motion than he would be in deadlifting or cleaning any other implement. So if you cannot get in this position, you're going to have to elevate the implement. Far too many people round their backs when they go to do this exercise. They think this is some type of cool, hard-ass exercise, but it's only a great way to throw out your low back. A lot of the same principles are going to apply as you would any type of explosive movement. He's going to lock in his upper back, his arms, his weights upon his heels. He's going to accelerate in one moment up to his shoulder. Now that doesn't sound like a lot's going on, but what he's got to be aware of is what's happening on the opposing side. Let's go and see one time up. Now a lot of people, what happens is they don't pay attention to the opposing side leg. So if the right shoulder, left leg, because our body works in natural X patterns. So a lot of people at this point are really rotated as they come up, or they try to overly rotate the other side. Remember, the whole point of this exercise is to look symmetrical, even though the body is not symmetrically loaded. So let's see a couple good reps here, Troy. So Troy's right over the top, locked arms, hips are low. His hips stay even as he catches it. He's going to catch it back down with his hips. Nice, Troy. And down. Now the next version is obviously squatting. So when Troy goes ahead and squat, this is actually a great screen if we're aware of what we're looking for. So we're looking for imbalances in a lot of lateral stability. For example, the shoulder position is our side plank position. So we're going to see how much lateral stability we have and can we fight forces of rotation and lateral flexion. So when Troy does this exercise, because the weight's sitting upon his shoulders, pushing down upon his postural muscles and really trying to cause compensations all throughout. So as his coach, I'm going to stand behind him, watch for a couple popular deviations. So he's going to shoulder up. And what I'm going to watch for first is, are his hips leveraged out to one side? I don't want to see him leveraged off. I want to see them nice and straight. So what I'm going to look for is his pelvis look even? Now I'm going to look for the gap between his ribs and his pelvis. Does that look even, or is one little flex to one side, again causing us some compensation? As he begins to squat, I'm going to see, does he start to deviate to one side or the other, or can he look symmetrical as he goes into that squatting pattern? As he does a few repetitions, I'm going to come to the side to see if he's actually moved his feet as well. A lot of times I'll use a line on the ground to see if people shift their feet, because they'll shift their feet to compensate for a tight pelvis or a lot of these instabilities. So the shoulder squat is a much more difficult exercise than a lot of people give it credit for if you're going to do it right. One of the exercises that we've really gained popularity with the sandbag is a rotational lunge. There's just so much that's beneficial about the movement. We have single leg stance and strength. We have anti-rotation lateral flexion, so we have a multi-planar exercise. We have powerful hip extension, very much similar to like we would see in a kettlebell swing, but because of the complexity of the movement, it's far more athletic. However, just like anything else, as it's got more popular, the form has really broken down on it. So we're going to go over a couple key points with this exercise. The first is to make sure that when you deadlift the weight up, it stays close to your body. Troy's going to keep his eyes going forward because your body will follow your eyes. He's going to begin really slow. So what we're going to look for when he steps is, can he keep his little hips in line? And as he drops down, does his pelvis rotate and collapse in? This is what happens to a lot of people right there. Drive back up Troy through the front heel. So first thing is we got to make sure he pushes into his ball of foot and toes and the back leg, heel on the front leg, to keep any rotation from occurring in this exercise. So even though it's called a rotational lunge, the name is a little misleading. The rotation is actually just referring to the movement of the weight, not his body. Because his hips are fixated, we're not going to want much lumbar rotation. We can get thoracic spine rotation because that's where we have mobility. So what he's trying to do is actually resist the lateral pull. So if the hip starts to rotate and pull, then we're losing those concepts that make us powerful and strong.